Welcome to The Well. I am Brandon Edgens. And that silence that you just heard is where Anson normally says, and I'm Anson Mount, but he's not here. I don't know where he is. Last time I saw him was in Toronto, and he was jumping over the back fence of his house with a loaf of bread and a pound of tea, saying he was going to go live in the woods. I haven't heard from him in a while. So, until Anson gets back, we're going to do a little episode here with our friend Bilge Ebiri. Bilge is a film critic and a dear old friend, and when I say old friend, I mean it in both senses of the word. We are both old, and we've been friends for a long time. And I wanted to have him on today to discuss an issue that is bothering both of us a lot, which is this obsession with opening weekend box office being some sort of indication about whether or not a movie is any good or not. We're going to talk about that and a few other things and basically advocate for going to the movies. Anyway, here's Bilge. He should do the rest of the talking because he is about 1,000,000 times more articulate than I am.
Where is Anson Mount? Where is Anson Mount? Why is he never here when I'm on?
Because he doesn't like you. We've talked about this.
Well, I know. I'm kidding. This is frustrating.
He loves you.
We love him. Everyone loves him.
No, the impetus here is I know what a fan you are of, among other things, George Miller.
Yes.
And Mad Max. And I want to just start by talking about Furiosa. Mm-hmm. Where do you? I don't like ranking, but everyone's doing ranking. So where do you place it now in the saga?
Well, I love Furiosa. If I had to rank these movies, I mean, Fury Road is incredible. Fury Road is a masterpiece. But so is The Road Warrior. But like weirdly, two very different movies. And I don't know if I would rate both of them as kind of the same level, but I would say, Fury Road is my favorite, followed by The Road Warrior. And then I would say Furiosa because because it's fresh in my mind. I've seen it 4 times already. I really enjoy it, but I also really love the original Mad Max. And I think Beyond Thunderdome is loads of fun as well. So I don't have any issues with any of these movies. And I do think Furiosa probably is suffering a little bit from the fact that it's not Fury Road, but it's like, I mean, only an insane person would have expected another Fury Road. It's very different tonally. It's very different structurally. It's trying to do something very different. It's still enormously entertaining, but it is funny because it's like, what's my favorite scene in Furiosa? My favorite scene in Furiosa, probably like a lot of people, is the stowaway scene where she's like, stowed away on the war rig and winds up in the middle of that ambush. And then you remind yourself, that's right. Fury Road is like this scene after this scene. It's just like 10 variations on this scene. And that's why it's so great. But I love Furiosa. I love the fact that it's got chapter headings. I love the fact that it's just so kind of expansive and epic and weird. I love that incredibly bizarre, twisted ending, which is so dark and sick. And the other thing I will say, and so many of these films, I mean, Fury Road especially, which I've seen so many times over the years, every time I watch it, I see something new, right? And its greatness in my mind is enhanced by that, right? There's so many little bits and pieces of Fury Road that I love and appreciate, but there are things that I caught like the 5th or 6th time I saw the movie. And that's happening with Furiosa too. Every time I see it, every time I watch it, I notice something new. And it's not like they're hidden. They're like they're things in the movie that are evidently in the movie, but there's so much to process as you're watching it. You just miss certain things, like the Octoboss. The whole story of the Octoboss in Furiosa. The Octoboss, the guy with the black horned mask who rides around with like a giant octopus parachute. The fact that he has his own men who are kind of loyal to him, and that he's basically sort of an ally of Dementus's. I'm launching right into the story here, but like the fact that he's an ally of Dementus's, but it's kind of a shaky alliance, and he basically turns on Dementis after Dementis kills a couple of his men while they're attacking Gastown, where they're trying to invade Gastown, and after that, the Octobos goes rogue, and it's the Octobos's minions who are attacking the war rig in that later sequence. Like that, I didn't catch that the first time. Like that was there was so much going on that I didn't catch that the first time. And it's like the second, third viewing, I was like, oh, okay, oh, there's like a whole story going on here, and it's there. It's not like they botched it. It's just there's just so much to process that you don't necessarily catch it the first time.
Mm-hmm. The whole thing, the amount of detail in people's backstories and how it comes out, and I mean, I missed that too.
Yeah.
But he built such a complete world, especially with the culture and the aesthetics and the way. And the thing that struck me, this is right up front, but the thing that struck me this time was how industrial society had become a topic of sort of legend and veneration, turning industrial objects into sacred objects. The scene of the guy, who's the guy with the tattoos in the face, the
history man.
History man.
Yeah.
Just speaking in his ear, Dementis's ear, just statistics about engines. As just like a
whispering
sacred text.
about the motorcycle. I mean, it's all these things, and this is, I mean, the word you use or the expression you used is absolutely the correct one, and it's an expression that's kind of overused in recent years because of the way movies have become. World building, right? I mean, world building is this thing that's like, it's actually gotten kind of annoying because you'll watch like a superhero movie or some other, like I don't know, Godzilla versus Kong movie, and people will be, oh, there's all this world building, and I'm like, but I'm not interested in this world. Like you built the world already. I don't need more world building. Like, this is 20th iteration of this thing. But George Miller does it so well. I mean, Furiosa is full of world building, right? And it doesn't bother me. In fact, I find it delightful. One, because it's all kind of an expression of his sensibility, of one person's sensibility, which I think is really important, because you do feel like you're experiencing a work of art and not just a piece of like corporate brand management, or something that's just like setting up more sequels. It does feel like it's an expression of an idea that one person has had, and it all feeds into this very dark concept that lies behind the Mad Max films, which is the absolute like destruction of human civilization.
That's the thing that I mean, everything in the Mad Max world is I love George Miller. I was a little surprised by Furiosa. I thought it was much darker. Oh, yeah. Really, I got a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I haven't really gotten in any film in a while. There's something so desperate, something so dehumanizing about that world that it's really, really ugly. And I'm wondering if you have any opinion or ideas about why now for him. I mean, he's 79. Is it getting older? Is he getting cynical? Is he what do you think it is?
Well, I think he might be getting cynical, although I would imagine the George Miller who made The Road Warrior was also a pretty fucking cynical guy. Well,
such a happy movie though.
Think about how these films developed. I mean, he makes Mad Max in 1979. It's very independent. He hasn't made movies before. I mean, he's made like some shorts and stuff, but he's a totally inexperienced filmmaker, like shooting on weekends with his buddies and stuff. And some of it is based on like experiences he's had in the emergency rooms. Mm-hmm. There is, I mean, the oil crisis is happening in the late 70s, and I don't know specifically sort of what's going on in Australia during this period, but there is this, there are a lot of really brilliant dark movies coming out of Australia in the late 70s, early 80s. So I imagine there's like a lot happening in the culture as well to feed sort of this era of cynicism and this urgency of the work that's coming out. But the first Mad Max is also not a dystopian movie. It's like set in something resembling the real world, although it is falling apart. Like you see like the police station and like the sign is like off its hinges and stuff. Like you do get the sense that things are falling apart. but they haven't quite fallen apart yet. And, I mean, I don't think he had an idea of like making a whole bunch of movies after this. It was just a thing he was doing. And then it was such a huge success. I mean, in Australia, it outgrossed Star Wars. Wow. And it was such a huge success that he then makes, he makes sequels, and, there's a studio behind him and everything. And in The Road Warrior, which I guess is 81 or 82, I can't remember right now, but it is, it's a post-nuclear environment, and it is very much, I mean, late 70s, early 80s is a period when people were really, really terrified about the prospect of nuclear war. I mean, more so than maybe they'd even been in the 1950s. I mean, in the 50s, you have, the stop, drop, and roll and all that stuff. Not stop, drop, and roll. That's duck and take cover. Stop, drop, and roll is for fires. Duck and take cover is for nuclear war. Significantly milder, yeah.
See, you wouldn't have survived, Bilge, if you had stopped, drop, and roll.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that duck and cover is how you survive a nuclear blast.
Yeah, exactly. I would have been rolling to my death while everybody was safe under their little Formica desks. But it's so there is this, because of the U.S. Soviet tensions, late 70s, early 80s, because of the Afghanistan invasion and the boycott, Ronald Reagan's rhetoric, sort of what's happening in Iran. Like, there is a sense at the time that the world is just falling apart. I mean, the world is always falling apart, but in like late 70s, early 80s, people really thought the world was falling apart. And they really thought that, nuclear war was like going to happen in their lifetimes. And I think The Road Warrior is a response to all that. And it's a very vivid and terrifying response to all that. And it's a very dark film. By the time Beyond Thunderdome comes out, it's like he's relaxed a bit more, and he's sort of, all right, well, it's not that bad. Tina Turner's here, it's like, it's like there's some cool stuff about it too. But like you see more of civilization. You see towns, you see bartering, you see economic activity. I mean, it's all totally twisted. There's a Thunderdome, 2 men go in, 1 man come out. But it's not as bad as we thought it was.
Hey, that's pretty organized, though.
Listen, 2 men go in, 1 man come out.
You've designated a space for your chaos. Let it play out in there.
And so honestly, a decent management of resources.
Yeah, right.
And then, Fury Road comes out, and Fury Road, as much as it does have, a very sort of dark, cynical spirit, it does feel a bit like a bit of fan fiction, because, he gets the idea for Fury Road, I think around the time, George Lucas announces he's making Phantom Menace, right? Because there is this period. I mean, a lot of movies, a lot of sequels to old properties get not greenlit, but inspired during this period, because it's if he can bring back Star Wars, which hasn't had a new movie since 1983, then surely we can, dust off old Mad Max, because I think this idea starts around then. I mean, it takes him years to make it. And he starts and stops. He has, I think he wants to make it right before September 11th, and then later he's going to make it in Australia, and he gets flooded out. So Fury Road takes about 15 years to get made, and it takes like 5 years to get shot. I mean, this thing is shooting forever, and in fact, Tom Hardy does Dark Knight Rises. I think he did Fury Road right after Dark Knight Rises, or maybe right before, but they're shot around the same time. And like Fury Road comes out years after the Dark Knight Rises comes out. So there is maybe less kind of social urgency, even though there is still this very vivid backdrop of the wasteland. But the film is so rousing and so exciting. And I read a piece not long ago calling it life affirming. And I'm like, I agree.
Okay.
But I think Furiosa is George Miller saying, everybody cool it. Stop dressing up as like Mad Max. Like you don't need to do cosplay. This is the end of the world. Like this is the end of the world and these people are dying. Like, I think it is very much him sort of bringing the focus back to the world that he created as opposed to individual characters' triumphs. So much so that he doesn't allow Furiosa to have her triumph. Like, I mean, she wins, she defeats Dementus, but even the way she handles Dementus is this kind of weird, I mean, as incredibly cruel as it is to Dementus, what she does, in some weird way, it's also designed to not allow her to have full satisfaction, which is also why I think the movie in some ways ends with like little snippets of Fury Road over the end credits, because they kind of have to be like, it's okay. Like, they're going to be okay because it's ended in such a dark place that they have to be like, it's cool. Remember Fury Road, how awesome that was? And they win at the end. It's going to be fine. They're going to be fine, So I do think that there's a bit of that going on. But I do think, one of the reasons why he's maybe more cynical is like, I mean, look around you, I mean, things like climate change and, potential, I mean, the possibility not just of climate change destroying our worlds, but us doing it before climate change even has a chance seems more realistic than ever in some ways. And I mean, it seems like a more immediate danger than ever. And I think, the old fears are back in certain ways. And I think, I think all that feeds into it. I mean, this was a thing that, when I interviewed Christopher Nolan about Oppenheimer, we talked about this. His whole thing was, he grew up in the early 80s, like we did. And, he remembers watching all the anti-nuclear protests in the UK when he was a kid. And he remembers just the atmosphere of just like impending death that Generation X grew up under. And he was aware that that fear had sort of dissipated over the years. But like when he was making Oppenheimer, I seem to recall he said something like one of his children asked him, "Oh, what's this about?" And he told them about it, and they were like, "Oh, that's not, people aren't really worried about that anymore." And Nolan was like, "Yeah, well, maybe they should be." And I think this is kind of Miller's idea too. It's like, yeah, I remember when this was like this like incredibly terrifying thing. And it's maybe the fear hasn't really gone away. The danger hasn't really gone away. It's still here. And we're still, basically like 5 minutes away from total annihilation at any given moment, it seems like. And I think he's kind of snapping the focus back to that with Furiosa.
Well, I felt that I could smell the gasoline and death throughout that whole thing. I was a little shook by it. I was surprised because Fury Road is such a ride.
Yeah.
And it's just so propulsive that you're just going the whole time. You're just going, holy shit, oh my god, and you kind of it's too much of a roller coaster to remember. Oh, that's right. This is the end of the world. This is not supposed to be.
Yeah,
fun.
and there's also the thing in Furiosa, which I think it almost feels like a response to Fury Road, which is like, they keep running out of gas. like preserving the gas and making sure that you have the resources is such a big theme in this movie. I mean, you see that in the opening sequence with, mom chasing, the guys on the motorcycles, and everybody's just like switching their, gas tanks from one thing to the other. And but it continues throughout the movie, even to like Furiosa's attempts to get away from the Citadel. At every given point, it's not just like she can't just run, she can't just leave. She needs to, first she tries to stow away on the war rig, because the war rig it is understood, and someone says it goes further than anything else. So the idea is she's going to go as far as she can on this thing, and she's stashed away a motorcycle with her and like some food and stuff. Like, so there's all this stuff under the truck that she's like hanging on to. And then, with Praetorian Jack, who agrees to help her, there's like this, they're going to, the pursuit car that they're, that goes along with the war rig, it has 2 motorcycles on it, and they're going to use those to get away. And it's like, there's always this calculation of how far can we get? And so much of it is related to stuff like resources, which Fury Road, it's like, I mean, in Fury Road, there's a certain point where they have to figure out how many like guns and bullets they have, but that's about it. There's never like, yeah, we sorry, out of gas,
Right.
wasteland, sorry,
Right.
we're stuck, we're gonna die here, you know.
Movie's over.
Yeah, movie's over.
Well,
Fade to black.
I think we like so that's what we clearly love the movie, and it's brilliant. George Miller's brilliant, but we haven't discussed the most important part of it, which is opening weekend, box office.
Listen,
what's up with that?
Yeah, what's up with that? Yeah, I mean, look, when I first saw it, I saw this movie. It played at Cannes, and I reviewed it out of Cannes, but they showed it to a few of us like a week before Cannes, and I watched it and I was like, oh, this is great. I love this. Oh, I have no idea if this is gonna be a hit, like, because it's like, I mean, Fury Road itself was not like a huge hit. It was a success. It did okay. I think it broke even. I mean, it was nominated for like a bazillion Oscars and won a bunch, and obviously very well regarded, but it wasn't like a gigantic hit. So then there was this, and Furiosa, it doesn't quite have all the simple pleasures of Fury Road. So is it going to be a hit, or are they going to be able to sort of market it in such a way that like just everybody shows up opening weekend and then it just drop off or whatever? And it didn't happen. People didn't show up. I mean, people showed up. I hoped and thought it would do a little better, but I did not expect this movie to be like a huge hit. So I'm not surprised it wasn't a huge hit. I am a little surprised that it was less of a hit than it was. And I don't think that has to do necessarily with stuff like, I don't think it has to do with the quality of the film. The thing that people always say is, look, opening weekend doesn't really have to do with the quality of the film. It has to do with the marketing. Yes, if the movie is just like a dead-on arrival, toxic flop that everybody can see coming from miles away, like a Doolittle or something, that'll flop. Like that'll flop because it's bad. But for the most part, opening weekend is just about fan anticipation, how you marketed it, stars, drawing power, stuff like that. And this is a movie that, Anya Taylor-Joy is great, but she's not like a huge star. She's not someone that people like, fall over themselves to get to opening weekend for. There aren't that many stars like that nowadays anyway. But Mad Max as like a property, as an intellectual property, is not, it's not Marvel, it's not DC. Not that those movies have been doing that much better either, but it's like, it's not necessarily a thing that people were going to jump. We will jump over people to get to them, but that's not, we don't necessarily constitute, a critical mass of people to sort of turn it into a hit. I do think that there is an under discussed phenomenon that does happen, which is that, look, the movie going audience, the people who go to movies, it's finite. It's not infinite. It's finite, and it probably is smaller than it used to be, but it's still enough people to like turn movies into hits. Like, people will still go to the movie theaters. They won't go to movie theaters the way they used to, which was, the way I used to, which was like, I still do this with my son, but like the whole every weekend, what movie are we seeing this weekend? We got off work on Friday. We're going to go see the big movie this weekend. All our friends are going to get together. People don't do that as much as they used to. And for a variety of reasons, they have other things to do. There's just other demands on their time. Movies are expensive, though not as expensive as everyone says they are, but whatever. But it's a finite audience. And sometimes people will go to a big movie and then they won't go to see the big movie the next week, right? And right before Furiosa came out, there was Planet of the Apes. And people came out that was a hit, right? And because this happened also with The Fall Guy, like one of my favorite movies of the year, people had just gone to see, they just gone to see Godzilla versus Kong, and they saw those. It wasn't Godzilla. What was that called? But what if the new Godzilla Kong movie?
Godzilla X
Kong,
and Hong Kong, King Kong.
Right. So they just gone to see that. So maybe they weren't going to see Fall Guy, or not as many of them were going to go see Fall Guy because they don't necessarily go to the movies every weekend anymore. But then they showed up for Planet of the Apes, and there's like, okay, well, maybe they skipped Furiosa for the time being. So So I don't know. I think there's a lot of different factors. And again, I mean, opening weekend is such a stupid way to. Obviously, that's how Hollywood does business, so we have to focus on it. But it's like it's such a stupid way to try and sell some of these movies, right? If you've made a good movie, opening weekend shouldn't be your be all and end all. You've made a good movie. Let it sit in theaters and let the word of mouth spread. Let people tell other people, hey, I saw this great movie, or this thing is worth seeing, or it's crazy, or whatever. Like, what's the point of making a good movie if all that you care about is opening weekend?
Well, that's my question. Is that I know you've already talked about this elsewhere, but why do we care? I mean, the open numbers, box office is important for like executives, maybe,
Yeah.
but like, why has this become such a like? It's the first thing you see about.
It's silly. It's silly.
My little theory is that when we started referring to movies as content and consumables and whatever degrading thing we want to call it, it's the only value it has is a dollar value, and we don't appreciate the film for what it is in the first place, which is a work of art, and even better than that, a social experience if you can get out to the theater.
We admire people and things that make money, and that's unfortunate. And we sometimes, it's instilled in us, and we're brainwashed by the giant capitalist machine that we live in, that is a really important thing that we should care about. And you see it in like conversations. I mean, you'll see it in conversations we have about, our jobs or other people's jobs. It's like, well, company's not making any money, so it's got to lay off some people. And it's like, yeah, company's not making money because of the people. Like there are other reasons why the company's not making money. Chances are the company's not making money because of a decision made by the guy who didn't lose his job. Like the company isn't losing money because the people you're laying off didn't do their jobs, and yet they're the ones who suffer. And this is something we accept as okay because we've kind of been educated to think that. And I think that's kind of what happens with the films. Now, I will say, look, two things. One, I say this as someone, I feel like I was patient zero in this whole thing because I remember when I was a kid, I would get I grew up in the DC area. Washington Post would publish in this little corner of the style section on Saturday the box office numbers for the previous weekend's movies. It was just like a little box, little top 10 list that they had. And Entertainment Tonight would cover it on Fridays and Saturday or whenever they covered it. But I remember the newspaper had this and it was like a week late, obviously, Saturdays. And then I remember when I discovered that if I read the New York Times, which I had to get at like a different store, they published that list on Thursdays, so 2 days earlier. And I was like, oh, this is great. I can find out. And it's just like, as a film buff, you do wind up getting sucked into the horse race quality of it. Although it's not because you care about what movie made the most money, but it is a kind of like team sport where you're like, oh, well, I like this movie and I want it to win. Like I like the Terminator and I want it to beat whatever, Beverly Hills Cop.
Right.
Beverly Hills Cop and Terminator were like, I think it was those two movies that were like locked in Mortal Kombat at the box office for weeks. Actually, at that time, I was probably more of a Beverly Hills Cop kid. But it is you like you get interested in this stuff because it's just another iteration of the giant bonanza of entertainment noise that you get sucked into, especially as a child. But then as you grow up, or as I grew up, it became more and more news and it became this like whole thing that now everybody talks about. And now I'm like, did I help make this happen? Did I help turn this into a thing? Like, am I responsible for this? So I always feel guilty about it. I will say, however, the other thing is post-pandemic, I do pay attention to box office numbers because I do feel like movie theaters really do need the help, and movie theaters really, it has been a thing, like trying to make sure that they recover, because I have this fervent belief, and I don't think I'm wrong about this. I do think people still like going to the movie theaters. I think there are a number of external factors why they don't. I think movie theaters themselves have to improve in certain ways because a lot of them are projecting the movies in absolute just crap form. But I do think that like the success of movie theaters is absolutely crucial to the success or to the ongoing existence of film as an art form, right? Because I believe if movie theaters go away, within a generation, movies will go away. You won't have them. You'll have TV shows because they're already trying to turn them all into TV shows anyway. And without the theatrical experience and that kind of contained, we're going to be here for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever, and have this experience, this complete experience that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and we're not going to do anything else. Once that concept goes away, and it's fair game, then it's to tweet while you're watching the movie, go on Instagram and show your screens and, pause it or, whatever, or, wait till the next episode. It just, the movie thing just goes away. And so I to me, it's like an existential thing to make sure that movie theaters are surviving, which is also why, in a weird way, I don't care if Furiosa makes money. I mean, I would like Furiosa to make money because I like it, but I'm like, if Garfield made the money, fine. Somebody make the money because the theaters need to survive. It'd be nice if it's the movie I really like that makes it, but honestly, if it's just something else, that's okay too. But I also want George Miller to be able to make more movies before he dies. So there's also that.
Well, it's definitely right. It's sort of an indicator for the health of the industry in general, looking at those numbers, because I didn't used to care either, but now, for reasons that you just specified, out of concern, I'm starting to pay attention a little bit. It has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. It's just what you just said, is the industry going to be okay? And you were on another podcast recently. You have to tell me which one. You were listening to the interview with Ted Sarandon, the CEO.
Oh, yeah. It was a CBC. It was a CBC show called Commotion.
Okay, CBC.
And yeah.
Anyway, the CEO of Netflix. And
he's the co-CEO.
Co-CEO.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, for people who don't know who he is. I listened to the same interview you did. It was on The Daily, I think, right?
I think so, yeah. It was the New York Times podcast.
Right. And he has this sort of perfect origin story that just, it's like you couldn't have written it better, that dovetails into what Netflix is and what the whole origin story. He was a kid working in a video store and he just loves movies and he loved recommending movies. So he turned that into the biggest business imaginable. So I don't know. I'm not asking you to psychoanalyze the guy, but it's interesting to me that he seems to just love that home theater experience so much. He got us all addicted to it as well. And he said in that interview that he doesn't think, you know where I'm going with this, that he doesn't think that the big screen helps movies like Dune and Oppenheimer. Yeah. And that seems utterly batshit insane to me.
Idiotic is the word. Idiotic is the word. Yeah.
Idiotic and batshit insane, both. For someone who I think loves movies, I guess I'm asking, what's wrong with him?
I don't know that he, what's wrong with, he loved movies. And there's a difference. I don't know that he still likes movies. I mean, he does. Look, he's the guy who convinced Scorsese and all these people to make movies for Netflix. There was that period when, they were getting top-notch talent into Netflix to make in some cases, their dream projects. And that a lot of that was driven by him, and a lot of that was driven by his passion. And it's a tragic story in a sense because, he built a business. I mean, he didn't build it. He came onto Netflix later, but Netflix. It's funny because the thing I always like to say to people, two of the biggest companies on earth are two companies that at heart are two types of stores that we've just been told don't exist anymore. A bookstore and a video store, right? Netflix is a video store. Amazon is a bookstore, right? I mean, Amazon obviously is not a bookstore. It sells so many more things, but it's still kind of a bookstore. And Netflix is like all these other things. It's still kind of a video store, not a DVD rental place anymore, but it's still kind of a video store. And he came onto this business, and he was one of these people who really sort of got into the idea of Netflix creating original content, um, which has been obviously very successful for them. And I don't even begrudge him that. Like I some of the films Netflix has made are great. Netflix made Athena, like the best film of the decade, as far as I'm concerned. The last time I was on The Well, we were talking about it. Netflix made The Irishman, which is great. Netflix made The Power of the Dog, which is great. Like there have been so many great films made by Netflix, and in some cases, films that no one else would have touched besides Netflix. And I appreciate them for that. And they're still making good films. I mean, they're releasing good films. They pick up good films. I mean, they're releasing Hitman, which I love. But over the years, there was this period early on when they were trying to also release their films in theaters and trying to make an effort to, and they had this whole thing, and AMC wouldn't cut a deal with them. And I think over the years, and I don't know if he started thinking off this way, but I know for a fact that Ted Sarandos now really sees movie theaters as the enemy. And there was this period when they were at least making the gestures to release movies theatrically, and they're still kind of doing it, but they're not really. They don't care about that. They don't want these movies. They don't want people seeing these things in theaters. They don't market the movies in theaters. I mean, they have their own theaters, like the Paris and stuff, which is a great theater. The Paris is like my favorite theater in New York, run by wonderful people, shows great movies, absolutely wonderful, like retro programming. And they're, owned by Netflix. But it's like people come out to see the rep programming there, but they don't come out to see the Netflix movies there.
Hey.
And it's sad in that sense, because Netflix could have been another studio, just sort of come at it from a different area, from a different perspective and a different approach. And I don't begrudge them. Like, yes, you should absolutely release these movies on streaming. And it's not like I want them to release everything. Like they're making. I mean, Netflix produces a ton of movies. They don't all need to be in theaters. But you have a movie like Hitman, let it play in theaters for months. Like let it have an actual audience, because the audience responds to that movie in a way different than they would if they were at home. And I think it'll be better for the streaming release too. I mean, look at. Obviously, Oppenheimer is an outlier in so many regards, but look at it and how well it did at every stage. I mean, it was a huge hit, obviously theatrically. It played in theaters for months because Christopher Nolan had it in his contract that it was going to. Comes out on like Blu-ray 4K, is like sold out before it even comes out, so that like Walmart and all these places are scrambling to keep up inventory. At every stage, at every step of the way, the anticipation is huge. It was a huge hit on streaming too. Like people are more interested in it because it was in theaters and it was a success, and they heard about it. Like, I think the idea that these movies, these like, this was the thing that I think the DVD era or the home video era really kind of proved to us, because there was a period when home videos were taking off in the late 70s, and VHS and all that, beta, that there was this fear in the industry that this was going to cannibalize their profits. Turned out not to be true. Turned out to be the exact opposite. Like, video was like the best thing to happen to movie theaters, or to movies, because it gave movies second life. There wasn't, yes, there were certain movies that people were like, oh yeah, I'm not going to watch that in theaters. I'm going to wait for rental. But like, theaters did okay. Theaters did fine, because it just reinforced the sense that movies were important and fun and worth seeing. And then the DVD era was like one of the most lucrative periods for Hollywood. They were making money in theaters, and they were making money on DVD. And they were greenlighting more movies because there was the sense, it doesn't matter if it makes a ton of money in theaters. It's going to eventually make us so much money on DVD that it's okay if it just does moderately well, theatrically. So this can exist. These formats can coexist. I firmly believe that. But it becomes a very different process when one of the quote unquote studios is determined to not coexist and is determined to kill off theaters so that its core business can survive. That we haven't seen before. And that's very dangerous. Like that's a very dangerous entity to have inside the walls of Hollywood, especially with a lot of money that they can throw at filmmakers. I think filmmakers are getting a little wiser to that. Like I know there were a lot of filmmakers. I mean, back in the day, everybody was, falling over themselves to work for Netflix because Netflix was giving everybody tons of money. But I know a lot of filmmakers now who are just like, I refuse to do business with them because of their stance on movie theaters. Like they're lying when they say, "Oh, we're going to give it a robust theatrical release." They're not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and I think that brings me to sort of a part of the show where I want to enjoin people to go to the theater. I think people are. I did it too. Look, I think because of streaming, because of our nice couches, because of my big 65-inch OLED screen and all my great, what I've noticed is that all of that has not helped me watch anything. It has gotten worse. And I think I'd, ask people listening to ask yourself, is watching it at home really better? It's more convenient. It might be cheaper. It's certainly more convenient, no question about that. Sure. But I have recently started, I've sort of gone through a theater renaissance in the past year, where I try to see something at least once a week in a theater, even if it's something I've never heard of, especially if it's something I've never heard of.
That's the best kind. Yeah.
Because, well, everything that you just said a minute ago, there's something about the social. Everything is amplified a little bit through a social experience. That's why people go to church in groups. That's why everything is better if you do it in a crowd. And just the effect of sitting in a full theater full of other people all looking at the same thing, all responding to the same thing, changes the experience completely. And I think we got cynical about it. We started thinking about, well, people are on their phones and people are talking, and that's true, and that's annoying. I would just go find a theater that really polices their audience and tries not to let them do that.
Yeah. And I don't, and that's the thing that, well, one, people were always talking during movies. I mean, this is the thing, Martin Scorsese, loves to talk about how when he was a kid, he'd just be running through the aisles of the movie theater, not paying attention to what's on screen. And I'm like, man, I would have kicked that kid's ass. Like if I was in a movie theater and there's just like a bunch of kids running around, like what the fuck? But so there was always that. And I don't know. Like some people get a little too worked up over this stuff. I will admit I'm a little, I have a bit of privilege because I like to sit up close to the screen. And so because I'm sort of in the frontish rows, I don't see what's happening behind me. And for all I know, everybody back there could be on their phones, yucking it up, and I just won't see it. So maybe that's what it is, but I don't see it as badly. I mean, I do see sometimes people will turn on their phones, but like the phones all have that kind of automatic brightness thing now. So it's it's not that bright. So I'm like, whatever, do your thing. I mean, you should get off the phone, but I'm not gonna, unless you're talking on the phone, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I will say I wind up very rarely in a theater. I mean, obviously I was just at a film festival for 2 weeks and was obviously in packed houses there. I'm rarely in a theater that's full, and I miss that. I went to see Furiosa in the theater, and I saw it at a press screening, but then I saw it again in France. I went a couple of times to the local theater, and then I saw it again here this past weekend with my son. And it was never particularly packed. So I didn't get the full sort of audience experience. And I sort of missed that. Like I wish I could experience that more often, frankly, because I really, really like what's more fun than watching like a great comedy in a theater full of people, appreciative viewers. So yeah.
Yeah, I have sort of literally kind of fallen back in love with movies just from going back to because it was becoming wallpaper in my apartment. It was becoming the noise box. And now I'm focused and like you said, you can't leave, or you mean you can, but it's a roller coaster. The bar comes down and it sets off, and now you're going to be there for 2 hours or so, and that makes you focus in a way that I just don't think you can be at home. It's just too easy to go do something else at home,
Absolutely.
anything else.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just want to say real quick. I know every film lover has stories like this, but like sometimes people talking to each other or talking about something unrelated, that's annoying. But if people are just so into the movie that they can't control themselves and start talking, I love it now.
I mean,
one of the best things, kind of the only thing I remember about seeing The Matrix for the first time was this dude sitting right behind me. And of course, he's kind of like making a lot of noises whenever there's like the bullet cam is debuted and stuff. And he's like, ooh. But at the end, when Neo is trying to become the one, this guy behind me is sincerely, I don't think he's crying, but he's sincerely back there going, come on, man. Come on, man. You've got to believe. You have to believe in yourself. Like, he wasn't trying to talk to anyone in the theater. He
was just talking to himself.
He just couldn't contain it anymore.
Oh, that's great.
And that sort of thing, that social experience, is what movies were originally about and for. And I had you on to talk about Mad Max and to also tell you to command people to go to the theater.
I'm trying. And so much of it has to do with that visceral experience when you're watching. I mean, that guy you're talking about who couldn't control himself. I was just on another podcast talking about The Rock, the Michael Bay movie, The Rock. And the thing about the film, and obviously it does this when you're watching it on home video too, but in the theater it really does this. It's like you have the visceral experience. You know, the scene, like this early scenes in the movie, the slow motion shots of like the Marines and the rain and the gravestones and like the fluttering American flag, that works on you on a visceral level. The action, the humor, it works on you on a visceral level. You're in a theater and you're watching a comedy and there's something funny and you laugh and the people around you laugh and there's this like symbiotic relationship. You all laugh and you laugh loudly. I watch comedies in my basement, perfectly enjoyable movies. I don't know if I actually laugh. Like, I don't know, like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's funny, but I'm not like, wah, like knee slap or uproarious laughing. And I'm not getting that visceral, like that physical release that happens. And that's actually like, I think important for just being human. And that's such an important thing that we've lost, especially, I mean, this is unrelated to Furiosa somewhat, but like the fact that comedies have died in movie theaters is so sad because that was like that was the best thing, man. Going to see a comedy opening weekend and everybody just laughing their asses off. That was like one of the best feelings in the world. And I feel like I'm just like, it's like almost impossible to have that reaction now, unless you go see like a cult comedy with like a bunch of nerds who've seen it a million times and they're like quoting it. But yeah, I'm trying to think, and you were talking about movie theater experiences with like people. The thing I remember, I'll never forget this, is watching the Conjuring opening night with my wife. And this one guy behind us, big guy, he's just like, oh man. And at one point he gets up, literally, halfway through the movie, he gets up and he leaves. And it's like, and I can't remember what he said, but he wasn't leaving because he was like upset and hated the movie. He was like, it was literally too scary. He was like, I can't do this. I can leave. And it was like such a kind of breaking of the social contract of like a horror movie. Wait, no, you can't leave. The whole point of horror is you have to be stuck here and with like this monster and you're helpless. But we
need you here.
But in a weird way, the fact that he actually got up and left somehow enhanced the experience because it was like, because it's like, oh, right. It actually is like, physically too scary, and he asked,
should I leave too? Does he know something we don't?
Turn the roller coaster off. I need to get off. You know.
Well, that reminds me of just one other quick one. This was during it was a huge. I think this is like at the what's the really big theater on 42nd Street? That's the biggest one.
Still there? The one that's still there, or the one that used to be there?
Used to be, I think.
Oh, the Astor.
I think so. Yeah, it was huge. And
44th Street. It was on 44th.
Okay.
You mean the screen, right?
Well, the screen of the audience too. They just sat up.
Right.
Tiered seating and
Yeah, the Astor was the one on 44th, and then the Ziegfeld was on 52nd, I believe, or 53rd.
Yeah, this is the Astor, I think. So
Okay.
I was watching the others there.
Oh, okay. Huh?
And you know the movie. You already know which shot, which scene I'm talking about. I'm sitting kind of in the back, and at the cut, right when the doors open, this woman in the front, probably like 5 from the back, threw. It was just such a spectacular performance. Threw an entire large bucket of popcorn, like 20 feet in the air, and screamed "shit!" And then this all this like confetti, like fireworks, went off and rained popcorn down on everyone, and everyone just howled with laughter. You can't do that in your house. It's never going to happen in your house.
Astor was great for that. I remember I saw Titanic opening night at the Astor, and I mean, like obviously Titanic, it like works its magic on an audience, and you know everybody responded at all the right spots. But the one response I will never forget, because I was not expecting that, and to this day I look at it as that was a moment when I should have seen what was coming. Is when Leonardo DiCaprio first puts on a tuxedo, right? Like Kathy Bates takes him into her like little room and puts on a tuxedo, and you see him turn around and he's got the tuxedo. The entire audience, not the entire audience because it was like male, female, but all the women in the audience, they all go, "Oh yeah!" Like just this a roar erupts, just "Oh yeah!" And it's just like, oh wow, like. Okay. Like, so he's a heartthrob. That guy. Like, they like him, huh? And of course, obviously, the movie was huge. He was huge. But it was that moment. Like, I had no idea that.
Really?
Like, it was not just Leonardo DiCaprio was a heartthrob. I should start dressing better. like it was like women like it when you dress nicely. Like if you put on a tie, they're happy. You know, like I was like it just never occurred to me.
You see,
I'm probably there in like my sweatpants watching this thing opening night.
You see, folks, you learn things on this show. You learn things in the movies too. I want to go see the Village. Was The Village? M. Night Shyamalan?
Village? Yeah.
That was another one of those that reminded me of one of those moments.
I mean, his movies were great for that kind of response.
Oh yeah. And so it was a full theater, probably near opening night. Audience is roughly split, men, women, and there's that line in there. I know is Joaquin Phoenix and
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard. And she says, it's a kind of a shot, a two shot, sort of their backs, and they're talking to each other. And she says, "Why do you keep all of your thoughts secret?" And all of the women had like yelled and clapped and yeah, that's right. Frustration with their boyfriends. And then he responds, "Why must you make all of your thoughts known?" And all the men stood up and clapped.
Oh, that's great. We did not have that response when I went and saw The Village. Yeah, I mean, I think it was like opening weekend because my wife was a huge fan of M. Night Shyamalan. I was not like a big M. Night Shyamalan fan, but my wife was like, I mean, we had just, I can't remember, we hadn't gotten married yet, I don't think. But we'd started dating, and she was like, "I want to go see the new M. Night Shyamalan." I'm like, really? And of course, The Village is like my favorite Shyamalan movie. I think it's a total masterpiece.
What are you looking forward to? What's coming up that we should, especially something in the theater? What's something that we should have our eyes out for?
I'm excited for Twisters. I mean, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Twister, which I remember I saw, again, opening weekend when it came out in New York. And, but it was such a great sort of, see it on a big screen because like the tornadoes are the main attraction kind of movie. So I'm excited for something like that in a theater. It's kind of a weird summer. Like there aren't a lot of big movies, or not a lot of big movies that I'm particularly interested in. I know a lot of stuff got delayed because of the strikes. So there is, there was already delays. There were COVID-related delays, and then there was like production backup, VFX house backup. There were already all these delays, and then the strikes just added to it. So it's a weird summer for that reason. Like there aren't a lot of big movies, which is why I think what's going to be interesting is to see how many of these smaller movies actually take over some of these screens. I mean, you've seen IFC Films releasing stuff like Late Night with the Devil and then they just released the film that In a Violent Nature. In a Violent Nature, I've seen In a Violent Nature. I saw it, for Sundance, and it's a crazy little movie. I would never have predicted that movie was going to get like a 1,500 theater release. And so I'm excited to see what little movies break out in the absence of sort of some of the really big guns.
Nice. Do you think that a movie like In a Violent Nature was especially successful because you saw it in a sort of a festival crowd and at the end a group of people?
So I actually saw it in a press screening where it was like me and like one other person. So I was totally not in that headspace. But it is so, and it's going to Shudder too. Like IFC is releasing it, but then it's going to get like a 3-week theatrical, and then it's going to Shudder or something. So most people will wind up seeing it on a small screen. But because of the way it's shot, like it's shot in these like long. Have you seen it? You haven't seen it, right? It's like, it's like an art film. Like it's shot like a Kogonada movie. It's like shot like long static takes of shots of a forest, right? And you don't see anything, and then you'll hear like some voices on the soundtrack, like people, the campers bantering, right? And then suddenly like a hook will appear, but it's got some of the most just disgusting gory kills I've ever seen in a movie. So it intercuts between sort of that incredibly meditative, static, arty style, and then just like jolts of absolute just disgusting kills.
I'm there, dude.
Both are kind of things you sort of want. I think you sort of have to see it in a theater for that reason, because you're watching like the big giant, the big static long takes of the forest. Those don't really work on a TV. You'll turn the thing off on TV, but then you kind of get totally immersed in it in a theatrical setting, and then obviously the gore hits differently at that size and with an audience. So I'm tempted to I don't even love the movie, but I'm tempted to just like go to the theater again to see it. Like find a look at the sort of listings and look at the little the screen, the little map of the theater that shows you which seats are full, and find a screening that's actually full and go see that, just to see it with an audience.
All right, man.
All right. Thank you. This was fun.
The Well is produced, edited, and recorded by Anson Mount and me, Brandon Edgens. Theme music written by Jonathan Myberg and performed by Brandon Edgens. Until next time, have a good time.